Hi, everybody. I decided I'm going to chat with you this morning because I read two articles yesterday that I thought they inspired me, but maybe not the way they were supposed to inspire me. But they inspired me anyway. And one was in the Wall Street Journal and one was in the Huff Post. And maybe you saw them. And they were on how the coronavirus is inspiring people to pray. And I thought, what doesn't surprise me, I'm sure it doesn't surprise many of you, that during times of crises, people turn to prayer, and then they normally are not as prayerful. But that's not the thing that struck me as being unusual. This is what did. They turned to psychologists to explain it, that prayer calms them, and they looked for psychological reasons. So, none of them mentioned grace. None of them said that perhaps the reason prayer has a calming influence on people is grace. Now, I realize that probably for a lot of psychologists, that's water they don't want to go dive into. I get that. But why not? Why wouldn't they say that? Why wouldn't they hint that maybe the power of prayer is grace? That when someone turns to prayer, that extraordinary calming influence that happens is not a psychological thing. It's not neurosynaptic. That something deeply, profoundly mystical happens. It's subtle, but it happens. And it's ever present. And I'll tell you, grace is a mystical substance. I'm asked quite often, what is grace? And, I can only wing that answer. I mean, there's no way to prove the unprovable. And I have lots of proof, but I can't produce it. I can't. I mean, what I can say to you about grace is that it's a mystical force. It's a mystical presence that mysteriously influences your life in ways that subtly come in and perhaps soothes you, calms you. Grace is not the kind of thing that, will move forces and move your furniture. I mean, it's not that. But it's the sort when you say, calm me down, help me out. I don't know what to do here. Something I think people should understand about the nature of God is that heaven is your ally. And to the extent that you use your resources, and then you say, I've done everything I can do, I don't know what to do, that's when forces come in that maneuver things for you on your behalf in ways you can't imagine. And it doesn't matter that you can't see something happening in front of you. It happens around in ways that's happening that will manifest eventually the next day, the next hour, or within you, or in the dream state. And that's the nature of grace. Grace moves the wheels, the laws of cause and effect, and action and reaction, and magnetic attraction in ways that you have run out of your own resources. That's how grace works. Grace is that calming thing that stops you from crossing into despair you can't get out of, or falling into that one negative thought that terrifies you the most. That's how grace works. Grace is that soft breeze that comes into you that says, call this person, gives you a thought you wouldn't have had. That's how grace works. Or it's that voice that says, you're going to be fine. You're going to get through this. And you don't know why it came in. You don't know why you thought that, but it did. But it does. Grace has that kind of motion to it. I don't know why it's occurring to me to tell you about something, an experience I had. I have no idea why I want to tell you this. But years ago, during Perestroika, so that's, I don't know how long ago now, 85, I went over to Moscow. And I ended up doing a seminar for a group of Russian scientists. And at the time, this is one of the craziest stories of my life. At the time, I was invited to this because of my medical intuition background. But these scientists thought I was a psychic, just your basic spoon-bending psychic. And so I'm in this room with them, and I had an interpreter. And usually when you're introduced, like someone would say, this is, Carolyn May, she's from the United States, and nobody said anything. I was waiting for an introduction, and all of a sudden I hear someone say, okay, begin. So I shot up, and I am not a nervous public speaker, but I was in my early 30s, and I was frightened and intimidated, and they were all sitting there with their arms crossed and looking at me like this. And so I started to talk about being a medical intuitive, and I was a baby at it. I was just a neophyte. And I'm also working with an interpreter. And then one person said, demonstrate. And what they wanted me to do was some kind of, trickery or something. And I said this prayer. I said, God, help me. I don't know what to do. I'm terrified. I mean, there I was in Moscow, and even my interpreter was hostile to me. And what occurred to me, and this is how grace works, you get a thought that is so out of character, and you have to act on it. You have to. And you need more courage in that moment than you've ever had in your life. And I look at these scientists. No one in the audience is an ally, and I have no friends with me. And I said, I can do readings on you. I can do that. And I looked at my interpreter and I said, you get every word I'm saying exactly the way I'm saying it. And I said, I can do a reading on you. But if I do that here in public, I'm going to expose each of you to each one of you and reveal private things that you may not want revealed. I said, so I can do this. I said, or I'll do a reading on each of you privately. Which do you want? And they leaned back, and I was supposed to be there for an hour. The day unfolded, and I did a reading on every single one of them. And it took me 7.5 hours. The last person was this Russian physician scientist. As he sat next to me, and I was so exhausted, and here again I credit grace, because I could barely see straight. I was starving by this time. My interpreter had become my bodyguard ally. This man sat next to me, and as soon as he sat next to me, my intuitive resources had become so clear, and I should have been burned out by that time. He sat next to me, and I knew he was dying. As soon as he sat down, I knew he had a terminal illness. And so I looked at Yuri, and I said, Yuri, this is going to be delicate, so this scientist grabbed my hand, and he put it to his heart, and he said, just tell me this. Is there a God? That's all I want to know. Is there a God? Will I see a God when I leave? And I said, yes, you will. Yes, That's what I can tell you. I can't tell you more, but I can tell you that. And he said, that's all I want to know. That's all I want to know. For me, I got through that entire experience on the wings of grace. I was never so frightened. And yet at the same time, I knew I could navigate that. I knew that. I knew, but grace is sometimes something you have to follow moment by moment by moment and trust. In each of those readings, in each person had become so vulnerable, so open, so hostile in the group, and so vulnerable behind the scenes. And each one believed in God behind the scenes, and none of them in front of the scenes. Each one behind the scenes wanted to know about the power of prayer, but none of them in front. None to their colleagues, but everyone to me. Like the coronavirus, it brings out what people believe behind the scenes, what they are perhaps hiding in their heart, or in behind the facade of reason and the rational mind, that when times are really difficult, when the irrational and the impossible happen, when you're faced with, I don't know where to go, when your vulnerability is what you see more than the facade of strength, then something activates inside of you that says, turn upward. Turn upward. I'll help you out. It's not a rational voice. What it is your spiritual, it's divine organics is what it is. It's your soul saying, activating in you and saying, turn upward. Just ask for help. Just say, help me out here. And this isn't religion. If you've listened to me, you know I don't talk religion, but I do talk mysticism. I do talk the mystery of there is something greater than us guiding us through. And if ever there was a time that you should listen to that part of yourself, because it is active, it's activating. It's activating in everybody. This is that moment. So just close your eyes and say this prayer. Hover over me. Help me out. Even if you are uncomfortable in prayer, just say, help me out. Just help me out. I don't even know how to pray, and I'm unfamiliar with you and how you work, and just don't forget me. Say that prayer. Just don't forget me when you are distributing grace. Help me out. That'll do it. That's enough. Promise. Okay, bye.